We got another men's bracketology for you. This one also based off of CBS. And we'll go ahead and start it off just with these first four play-in games. Missouri St. Mary's. I don't know if either of these teams is guaranteed a spot in the tournament at this point. I feel like Missouri, if I had to pick one, is probably the better team. I don't even know who NJIT is. This game doesn't matter regardless. We'll do the other 16. I'll go Merrimack. I feel like I think they made it last year actually. And then Miami, Oklahoma State. Miami's been kind of hot recently. Oklahoma State plays in the tougher conference. I think I'd pick the Cowboys there. Any disagreements, Connor?
Nope, the only one that I'd maybe switch is St. Mary's, but I think that's actually going to be the most competitive out of those two games. But it's kind of the same thing. Do you take who's playing in the tougher conference in the SEC, or do you take the team that might actually have a little bit better of a record? But I'm fine with Missouri for right now.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the top left of the bracket. And Michigan Long Island be a great game. Michigan probably wins by 50. It looks like they moved them up to the number one overall seed as well after that Arizona loss last night. That's a little bit interesting. Utah State and Indiana. Uh, I feel like Utah State's been solid, but I like the way this Indiana team has been playing recently. The win over Purdue at home was good, and it wasn't just a one-off. They've been winning games since then. So I actually like the Hoosiers here as well.
Yep, I agree. Louisville and Belmont, I think Louisville is just the better team. No miracle Cinderella run for Belmont with an easy schedule ahead of them. And then Gonzaga Troy. Now, I would say hear me out here because Gonzaga just lost to, I don't know if it was it Santa Clara? Yeah, I don't know. It was some bottom
It
feeder
was
team in the
Seattle.
Pacific. It was Seattle. Okay. Or no, was it Portland? It was some team out in the West in the conference, but whatever. And I don't know. Maybe I'm starting to not trust Gonzaga as much, and maybe we get 13 over 4 here. I don't know how the other 13s match up, but honestly, if I think one of them's gonna happen, I would say it's Troy. I don't know a whole lot about Troy, but I don't know. What do you think, Johnny? You want to pick an upset here, just because it's so early?
I'm certainly not against it. I was wrong about it being Seattle. I think Seattle beat Gonzaga last year. It was Portland who beat them. But yeah, I'll go ahead and take Troy. Got to get some upsets in there every once in a while. Arkansas and Miami of Ohio. I'm telling you right now, I am so confident in this. People are going to pick Miami, Ohio. It's going to be one of the most popular upset picks. I don't even know if they win the MAC. I think that they're going to make the tournament, but I feel like they're going to lose a game at some point. And I think that as one of the most popular teams to pick, I think they're going to lose in the first round. So I've got Arkansas there, and I'm pretty confident in that. And then the Gators, they kind of fell off at the start of the season. They've been playing really well recently. I think they'll continue that against a 14 seed.
Yep, agreed. Tennessee and UCLA. UCLA kind of similar situation. They've been starting to play a little bit better now, but I just think Tennessee is a lot better when they're playing at their peak. Now, if they will play at their peak is the big question, but I still feel confident taking the Volunteers here because I do think they're one of the few teams that even at a lower seed could maybe make a little bit of a run. And then Iowa State over Wright State, I think is pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and continue down this left side. Duke and Morgan State. I think Duke has been playing really, really well recently. I like Cam Boozer. The loss to North Carolina definitely hurts. Didn't take him off the one line though. Still a really good team. Auburn and Wisconsin. This one's very interesting to me because I think Auburn, obviously people had them ranked in the preseason. They haven't been quite as good as that, but yes, there's still an 8 seed in this. In my opinion, that's a little bit high. And I actually think Wisconsin's a little bit low at a 9. I really like this Wisconsin team. The win over Michigan on the road, obviously, is their best win of the season. And they've been playing good basketball. I think Wisconsin's got a couple more quad one wins in them this regular season. I wouldn't be surprised if they move up here a couple seeds. And I actually do think that they're the better team than Auburn. So this is one of those cases where I think the 9 seed is just legitimately better than the 8. Not to say
Yep,
Auburn, but I like Wisconsin.
yeah, I agree. I mean, I do think Auburn can definitely win this game, but Wisconsin has shown lots of flashes throughout the season so far. Virginia and Liberty, I think Virginia wins pretty handily here. I don't know a ton about Liberty, but the Cavs have been playing pretty good all season long, and the ACC is actually pretty competitive this year, at least at the top. And then Alabama has kind of raided the ship a little bit. I definitely have a lot more confidence in them than I think the last time we did a bracketology video. So I'm going to roll with the Crimson Tide here, even though UNC Wilmington could give them a bit of a scare.
Yeah, I've got to say though, the 4 seed seems really high for Alabama. I think we might end up switching off of CBS for the next bracketology, kind of just to get a different idea of, where some of these teams could be at. Because personally, from what I've seen from Alabama, I know they've been playing a little better recently, but I'd have them around like a 6 seed right now at the highest probably. And speaking of 6 seeds, there's Clemson. Clemson's been playing really well. Like Connor just said, ACC has been solid this season. Clemson and Santa Clara is actually a really interesting matchup. I think Clemson's the better team, but this is one of those cases where I think Santa Clara is a strong enough 11 that they could pull it off. And then Purdue and Winthrop, that they're really tempting me because they keep putting Purdue on the 3 line, and Purdue has not lost to a 14 seed yet. It's the only double-digit seed they have yet to check off. I'm gonna stick with Purdue for now, but man, I really feel like this Purdue team is overrated still.
Maybe a little bit. It is kind of hard though, considering they have one of the best point guards in the entire country on their team. So they are definitely capable of making deep runs, but
Yeah,
it's still, the curse from the last couple of years. But I'm in agreement with you. I do think for right now, there's no real reason to pick against Purdue. Also,
I
just
wouldn't be
interesting thing of
surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Purdue ends up finishing around a 4 or 5 seed, though. I don't know. I feel like 3 is like the very best they could do, and I wouldn't be shocked if they fall a little bit.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me either. Also, just a interesting thing of note, Santa Clara is currently the number one team or the top of the conference in the West Coast, ahead of Gonzaga with their recent loss. So that's just something pretty interesting to note. But Villanova, Texas, two teams that I don't think are very good, but definitely have some competitiveness to them. I don't know. I'm thinking about picking Texas here. I do think Villanova has had a couple good games, including against UConn, but I think the SEC is still the more competitive conference here, and I think Texas has shown at times that they can be a very, very strong team. So I'd like to pick the Longhorns here, but I'm willing to pick Villanova if you think differently.
I mean, I think Villanova's been a little bit underrated so far, but I'm not against either one of these teams. I do think Texas has been pretty strong, so we can go ahead and go with the Longhorns. I just think that's an unfortunate matchup for Villanova because I really do feel like they could beat a decent amount of teams in this first round. And then Kansas and Harvard, I think that one's pretty straightforward. This Kansas team, they've moved up to the 2 seed, and I'm not going to necessarily predict it, but if they keep playing like they have been, Kansas could potentially move up to a 1 seed even.
100%.
Arizona and UT Martin, I think that one's still a no-brainer. This Arizona team, obviously, that like we are just talking about Kansas, they got their first loss of the season last night to Kansas. It was a great game. Arizona's still a really good team. I mean, nobody has beaten Kansas in their home stadium this season except for UConn, and that was early in the year before Kansas had Darren Peterson, who, conveniently didn't play last night also. But still, Arizona's a really good team. NC State and Texas A&M. I'm actually going to go NC State here. I like the Wolfpack, and I feel like I don't know a ton about either of these teams, but this is one of the cases where I do like NC State a little better.
Yep, I kind of agree with you. Kind of the same thing. I don't know a whole lot about either of those teams. But North Carolina, Utah Valley, honestly, with that win against Duke, I think North Carolina has shown that they have experience on their side and they're going to keep climbing up these polls, I think. And I'm going to pick the Tar Heels at least for right now until another collapse might happen. And then Texas Tech, Hawaii, finally the Red Raiders actually get a decent matchup, not against a team like Miami, Ohio. I still think Texas Tech is one of the best teams in the country, even though they're only at a 4 seed. And I think that's just because they have played against so much tough competition in the Big 12.
Yeah, I think both of those are pretty clear to me. Kentucky and Oklahoma State. I think this one's interesting. Kentucky's been so up and down all year. that I feel like a team like Oklahoma State could absolutely jump them in the tournament. And I mean, the fact that there's generally a team from the first four who makes it through at least the first round, I I really like the Oklahoma State pick here, actually. I think that the Cowboys have been playing some really solid basketball, and I think they could definitely down the Wildcats. And then Nebraska and Portland State, it would be funny if Nebraska never got a tournament win still with their best season ever, but I think this team is destined to finally do it. So I do like Nebraska to move on at least one round.
Yeah, I do think that Kentucky-Oklahoma State game can be very interesting because I think Kentucky's actually been playing a lot better as of recently. They just jumped back into the top 25 in the most recent poll, but I do agree with you. They can be up and down with the way Oklahoma State's been playing. They easily could get a win there. St. Louis, USC, honestly, kind of similar to the Miami, Ohio game from earlier. I think this is a pretty much a no-brainer. I think USC just has played way better competition and should get a win over St. Louis. Do like this game a lot better for St. Louis, kind of surprisingly. I think that there is an aspect where they haven't played any good teams because maybe those good teams don't want to play them because they might end up losing and that might tank their season a little bit. But I still think USC is a pretty solid team and can get a win over St. Louis. But I don't know. What do you think, Joe?
I mean, I haven't been huge on USC. I think that the fact that I don't remember if they did lose to Penn State or not. I just know it was a close game and it definitely shouldn't have been. So, yeah, they did end up winning that game. But regardless, I think USC just maybe isn't as good as people expect. So I like St. Louis there. I'm not even sold on USC making the tournament necessarily. And then UConn and Navy, I think, is pretty much a no-brainer. Houston and Merrimack. Houston did move up to that one seed. We talked about that in the last bracketology we did, that was something we wouldn't be surprised by. And then Georgia and SMU. I think SMU's been playing some really good basketball, and it hasn't necessarily been getting as much attention as it should. So I like SMU to win that game.
Yeah, I think Boopie Miller is one of the better players that we see in college basketball right now, and I do think he can lead the Mustangs to a win there. St. John's and USF. St. John's just got a huge win over UConn, so I trust them a lot more now, but hopefully they don't let me down again this year. And then Vandy, SF Austin. This is definitely a better matchup for Vandy compared to I think what they had in the last bracketology or any other four seed. So I do think they can win that game pretty handily.
Yeah, BYU, Missouri. I love this BYU team. I think they're really good. So I like them to beat Missouri. And then Michigan State, North Dakota State. I think that's a good matchup for Michigan State. They should be able to move through that one pretty easily.
BYU is so interesting though, because I know it's been a tough stretch, but they have dropped four games in a row. And that is including to Arizona, to Kansas, to Oklahoma State, and to Houston. Now, granted, all four of those teams are in the bracket right now, and three of those teams are ranked. But BYU's got to figure some stuff out because I don't think, at least right now, I'm not as confident in them to make a deep run in the tournament this year unless they can start figuring some things out. But
Yeah,
I still think they are better than Missouri.
they play at Baylor tonight. I think that one will be pretty telling because Baylor's only 13 and 10. If they lose that game, I think there's some serious concerns to be had. But I mean, when your worst loss in that four-game stretch is a close loss on the road against a hot Oklahoma State team, I'm not going to panic on BYU as of yet. Iowa UCF, I think Iowa's been playing some really good basketball. I like them to win. And then Illinois, they'll move on over Austin Peay. All right, on to the second round. Got a Big Ten matchup early, and since we've already talked about most of these teams, we're going to kind of start to move through the bracket a little bit faster here. Michigan and Indiana, I think Michigan wins that. Just overall, significantly better team. Louisville, Troy, I think that's pretty free for Louisville. Arkansas and Florida, really like this Florida team. They've been playing a lot better, like I said, and I think that they'll be able to get it done and move on to the Sweet 16. And then Tennessee, Iowa State. Last week, I think we had Iowa State go out early. I think this is a better matchup for them. The Vols are solid, but I like Iowa State to move on.
Yep, no notes. Duke and Wisconsin. I still trust Cameron Boozer and this Duke team. I think that they'll start to figure some things out as we get closer and closer to the start of the tournament, even though they are still a young team. Virginia and Alabama is pretty interesting. I mean, I'll consult with you on this one, but I think Virginia is probably a little bit more consistent right now. I know Alabama has shown the like top end talent at times, but there's just something about this Bama team with so many close games that I'm tempted to, or not even tempted to pick Virginia. I'm leaning more to Virginia because I trust them a little bit more. And obviously, I think you agree with me on that one. Purdue and Santa Clara. Unfortunately, I still think Purdue is probably the better team, and I don't want to pick them to lose just yet, even though Santa Clara is still probably a good team and can give them a good matchup. And then Texas, Kansas. Kansas is playing like the best team in college basketball right now, so I think it's a pretty easy pick there.
Yeah, I like all of those. For Virginia and Alabama, I think I hinted at it earlier. I think Bama's too high at a 4 seed. So yeah, I agree. I think Virginia's the better team. They shouldn't be a lower seed right there. And then I agree with you on Purdue. I think that they're solid enough. They'd beat Santa Clara. Kansas is better than Texas. Really liking this Kansas team right now. They're definitely hot. Arizona, NC State. NC State got absolutely blown out the last time they played a ranked team. And I don't really foresee them being able to hang with the big dogs like Arizona, North Carolina, and Texas Tech. This one is brutal for me because I really think both of these teams are really good. And I'm gonna have to go with North Carolina here. I think it would be a really good game back and forth, but it feels like North Carolina started to get onto something, and they're more of a blue blood. So I'm gonna lean with the Tar Heels there. That one really could go either way though. Oklahoma State, Nebraska. This is another interesting one because I can see Oklahoma State's run continuing. And it doesn't help that Nebraska hasn't had a good history in the tournament. But at the same time, this Nebraska team really feels like they've got something figured out. I'm not against moving on Nebraska for their second tourney win. I think we hated on them a little bit too much last week. And then St. Louis and UConn, great season from St. Louis. They are not UConn.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with all of these. The North Carolina Texas Tech one is definitely the most interesting of those four games. And I could see either one of those teams, if they were to get a win, moving on to face Arizona and actually beating the Wildcats there. It'd be a tough game, but I think both those teams have shown that they are easily one of the best teams in the country. So I'm fine with picking North Carolina for right now because they have started to figure things out, and they did just beat the team that we picked to win the whole tournament last week with the bracketology. So no notes here. Houston SMU. Houston is the most consistent team, I think, out of any team in the tournament right now. So I think we have to go with the Cougars there. St. John's and Vanderbilt. That's an interesting one too, because St. John's has been hot, but like I'm still thinking about last year when St. John's let me down a little bit. But Vandy's also kind of been all over the place, so I'll let you be the deciding vote on this one because I don't really have an opinion either way on either of these teams.
I'm also torn on this one. I feel like either one of these teams could easily lose to a bunch of other teams who made it through just one round. So I'm not confident in this, but I'm gonna go ahead and say St. John's.
I kind of agree with it because at least they've been here before as like a decent team. I don't know if Vandy's necessarily had that much experience, but I don't know, maybe I'm not remembering everything correctly. But and then Michigan State BYU, I kind of hinted at it, at least from my perspective. I think this BYU team needs to figure some stuff out, and until they do, I'm going to lean with Michigan State because they have shown at times that they can still be one of the best teams out there. So I'm still going to lean with Tom Izzo and the Spartans. And then Illinois, Iowa, Illinois, kind of the same thing as Michigan State, has at times looked like one of the best teams in college basketball, and I have no real reason to pick against them right now, even though Iowa has still been playing pretty good. I think the Illini are still the better team.
Yeah, that's one where I wouldn't necessarily rule out an upset, but I agree that I think it would be Illinois who comes away with the win. So we have our Sweet 16. Moving on to the Elite Eight, I still think Michigan is the better team here. Louisville maybe would be able to give them a little bit of a run, but this Michigan team is just, they've been playing really, really well as of late. Florida and Iowa State, I think, is a really interesting matchup. I actually like Iowa State here a little bit more. This you can also have a vote into this game, Connor, because I'm not necessarily very strongly in favor of Iowa State, but I do think that they're slightly better in my opinion.
It's pretty close, especially because I'm just thinking about Florida as the reigning national champion. Maybe they have like a little extra chip on their shoulder, but I mean, this Iowa State team has just been so good. Their only losses on the year, they only have two, is one at Kansas, and then trying to find the other one. But I do think kind of similar, and I've said it with a lot of teams. They have shown that they can be one of the best teams out there. So I'm going to lean Iowa State for right now too, but. Both of those teams are incredible and could easily get out a win and put up a fight in their next round against Michigan in this one.
Yeah, Iowa State has a brutal stretch coming up. They play Kansas at home, Houston at home, and then at BYU. I think we're going to learn a lot about this Cyclones team during that stretch next week. Duke and Virginia. I think Virginia's had a really solid season. I don't think that they would beat Cam Boozer and the Blue Devils. And then Purdue and Kansas. We've talked about how we think that if Purdue came up against a decent team, they'd probably lose. And I would certainly say that Kansas is more than a decent team. So I'm pretty confident in that one. I think we have a very strong group down here with Duke and Kansas there. That will be a great game.
Yeah, 100%. Arizona and North Carolina, I kind of talked about it a little bit. I definitely think the North Carolina Texas Tech winner can put up a fight against Arizona. And I don't know, Jonah, maybe it's just because they came off of such a huge win in a rivalry game, but one of the one seeds I think has to lose at some point, maybe a little early on. And surprisingly, considering they were the only team in the country outside of Miami, Ohio to not have a loss until last night, I'm kind of saying that North Carolina is going to win this game as of right now. I don't know. It's definitely a lot of recency bias, but I think for this, they got a chance.
I don't disagree that they have a chance, for sure. And I actually was also leaning North Carolina, and I don't want people to overreact and say that we're overreacting because Arizona lost last night. I think regardless of that, I was going to end up picking North Carolina in this game. They have been playing really, really well recently. They're continuing to move up the rankings, and I think that with that win over Duke, it showed that they have the ability to compete with some of the top programs. So I'm 100% on board with being able to make that pick, even though Arizona is a great program.
Yeah, it's just a tough matchup for them there. And then Nebraska, UConn, maybe I'm kind of going the other way, but I haven't fully been convinced by UConn this season, surprisingly. I don't think they're as strong as they have been in the recent couple of years. I think maybe Nebraska's run continues a little bit. They have, like you said, have figured a lot of things out, and I do think they are a very, very strong team. I think there's a world where they can beat UConn. I think UConn has shown their vulnerability at times in a much weaker conference in the Big East.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I think that the St. John's loss being recent definitely that plays into it for me a little bit because St. John's isn't a bad program. Nebraska, on the other hand, I mean, they haven't had the toughest schedule. The win over Michigan State at home is great, but other than that, they lost to Michigan on the road in a close one. They lost at home to Illinois in a close one. I think it might be pushing it a little bit. What I'll say about this is I think I'm not against picking Nebraska, and I think that we'll go ahead and do that. If Nebraska loses to Purdue tonight, I would pick UConn in this game because Nebraska's at home. I'm not loving Purdue this season. If Nebraska isn't able to hang on in a game like that against a team of very similar caliber, then I think that UConn would be able to beat a team like Nebraska should that game happen in the tournament.
I think that's a fair assessment, and I do apologize. I thought they had that you kind of dropped a game to Creighton, Providence, or Villanova, or even Georgetown, but those were all just close wins in that stretch. But that goes more into why I feel a little bit uneasy about them. But they're still a great team.
Yeah, and then Houston and St. John's. I mean, just talking about St. John's, they did beat UConn. I think they've been playing a lot better recently. They started ranked really high, just back into the rankings at number 22. That's a game that Houston, I think, will be able to control and be able to win. Now, Michigan State, Illinois. We saw this game actually just last week. Michigan State came away with the win. It was a great game, and I I don't know if I'd pick Michigan State again. I think both teams are playing very well right now, but I actually am going to go Michigan State here. I think it'd be really close. It's basically a coin flip for me.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's a coin toss. You can go either way. Both teams have shown why they deserve to be such high ranking teams, both in the poll right now, but also as seeds in this tournament. But I do think that Michigan State has been here so many times before and actually has success that I'm willing to pick them.
All right, for the final four, Michigan and Iowa State. I think this is another really good matchup. And I'm torn on this one because I do think people are underrating Iowa State, but I can't pick against Michigan in this game right now. I think they are playing unbelievably well, and I do think that as of right now they're a very good chance to make the Final Four. And then Duke and Kansas, Connor might disagree with me on this one. I think Cam Boozer's been playing great. I think a healthy Darren Peterson has also been playing amazing basketball. I think that'd be a great battle. And as of right now, I'm actually leaning Kansas here.
You think I'm gonna disagree with that? That was gonna be my pick. You stole my pick. I thought you were gonna be the one to pick Duke in that scenario, just because, like last year, you picked Duke for most of our bracketologies, and I think in your actual bracket, you had them going pretty far. And then I thought it was gonna be the same thing this year, but you know what? Props to you. Props to you, because I agree. I think Kansas is the hottest team right now, and they easily can make a deep run and beat some of the best teams in college basketball right now. So yeah, I agree. Kansas gets the win there. North Carolina, Nebraska. I think this is where Nebraska's run ends. I think this is where experience starts to outweigh some of the maybe talent disparities at times. I'm not saying North Carolina isn't better or worse than Nebraska, but North Carolina has been here time and time again. I think they're just going to win out with experience there against Nebraska because, I mean, this will be the first time Nebraska's even won a tournament game in their program's history.
Yeah, I like that North Carolina pick. I think that just makes sense. Houston and Michigan State, I'm actually a little bit torn on because I do really like this Houston team, and I think that they've been really good. But Michigan State, they have some really good wins, and they can put up points, which makes me think that they maybe would have a shot against a team like Houston. I am torn on this. I think the safest pick, though, is probably to stick with Houston, but I'll go ahead and let you decide, Connor.
Well, honestly, I'm not torn in the slightest. I think Houston is very, very good this year. Also, I believe led by a freshman scorer, and I know that maybe that's a lot to put on their shoulders, but this Houston team, kind of same thing as North Carolina, has been here before. And maybe they haven't gotten done in the national championship, but I do think overall they're the most consistent team out here, and I think that's the biggest thing, and that's the biggest issue or strength with this tournament, or what this tournament tells us about is can you consistently win games against great teams? And I do think that Houston has that ability. Not saying Michigan State doesn't, but I think Houston is definitely been here before and has done that time and time again. So that's ultimately why I'm going to pick Houston in that case, but easily could be a Michigan State win, but I think Houston has shown that consistency more often.
Yeah, now for our national championship, this game between Michigan and Kansas is going to be a really, really good one. And I'm actually going to go with Kansas here. I think Michigan has been playing really good all season, but we've seen them struggle for periods at time. And I think that Kansas has just, as of recently at least, they've been on a very good hot streak. They've won 8 games in a row now, beaten Iowa State and Arizona, both teams that are very highly ranked currently in the top 5 of the AP poll. I really like this Kansas team. I think that they have the ability to make it all the way to the national championship.
100% agree. This game would be absolutely electric, and I could see either of them winning because Michigan's got a little bit more experience on their side with their front court players. But yeah, it's just the fact that you've won 8 games in a row in one of the toughest conferences in college basketball, I think Kansas is a very, very good team, and I think a lot of people are starting to pick up on that as we get closer and closer to the tournament. And then North Carolina and Houston, I think you know where I'm going with this one. I think North Carolina's had a great run and has been very good as of late, but so has Houston. Houston has shot back up into the top three in the recent poll after some big wins, and I think they'll continue to do so as they move through Big 12 play and get into the Big 12 tournament. I think the Cougars move on or are back in the national championship game.
Yeah, 100% agree. We end up with an all Big 12 national championship. And my thoughts on this game, it's torn because I think that Houston is the better team, but at the same time, Houston still has not been able to win that national championship. I think Kansas has been playing great as of recently, but if you look at the whole season, Houston is the better team. And if the bracket played out like this, I think that they actually have a really good shot to get it done for the first time.
Yeah, it's very, very close. I mean, both these teams are led by a freshman guard, which, that's just a lot to put on their shoulders. But I think Houston is the more experienced team where it counts. It's very, very close. It's the most minute of details, but I kind of agree with you. I think this is the year after just falling short so many times that Houston is finally able to get it done. It's going to be a crazy game and maybe even a rematch of the Big 12 championship game. But I do think at the end of the day, Houston, just because they've been so consistent all year round, will walk away as the national champion.
Yeah, I think that if the bracket played out like this would be my pick for sure. Houston, I'm not going to say it's necessarily the favorites right now, because I think that they didn't necessarily have the worst path to get to this point in this bracketology. But as of right now, Houston is going to be our national champions. So thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you in our next video.